Welcome to another episode of Expected Buffalo, the podcast. We are brought to you by One Pie Pizza, onepiepizza.com, located 2185 Clinton Street, open daily from 9 to 8. In Hiller and Comerford, hillercomerford.com, 1866-LAW for your local personal and injury disability go-to. We are here recording on a Tuesday night, a couple days before Thanksgiving. Looking forward to that. I don't know about you guys, but looking forward to that. I got my Tottenham Hotspur hat on today after their game was canceled on Sunday and didn't happen. I'm now trying to put a little support behind their Champions League match tomorrow against PSG. They're going to need all of the support they can get in that one. So a little bit of a good vibes wear today with the Spurs hat. But we have a interesting hockey team, I think, now to talk about here as we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about 4-1 in their last 5. We have players back from injury. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about what the results of that is with certain players. We're going to talk a little bit about their 5-on-5. And then we're going to get into looking ahead, their next 3 games to wrap up the month. And a little bit of a deeper focus on their next opponent, the Pittsburgh Penguins, which will be tomorrow or today whenever you're listening to this. So let's jump right into it with how we usually go about it. And that is a recap of the last few games. Like I said, they are 4-1 in their last 5 games. A nice homestand where they had picked up wins in 3 of 4, including wins over Edmonton, Carolina, and Chicago, with a dreadful Calgary Flames loss mixed in the middle of that. But you take 6 out of 8 points at home on that stand. That's definitely a nice rebound from the road trip where they only picked up a handful of points. But 4-1 your last 5, that's what you want to see in those 5-game windows. And really, it gets back to getting healthier. And, there's a few things. Rewind the clock back a couple weeks when we were talking about, this feels like a team that's dead in the water and accepting reality and, wanting to see changes and all of that, where, a bad week might be back there again. But really, I think a few things that I underestimated. Well, one, I think I underestimated how fast Dahlin to be back. So I think that immediately changed the dynamic. We talked about how impactful Benson was, so that's not really a surprise. But I think I really underestimated, to a degree, Zucker's impact on this team. And it's not only from an on-ice standpoint, which is obviously important. I think it's an off-ice veteran being in the room around the team and playing that I think is that I undervalued. Now his numbers before he went out, they weren't that great. They were actually pretty poor. And you can wonder if maybe at the end of that run he was on, he maybe wasn't feeling the best, and that could have played into it. But since coming back, he's been good. He's been the player that we saw last season, and he's helped stabilize their forward lines. And then Benson jumping back into the mix in the last game only furthered that. So it's really encouraging. You're starting to see this build out, and you're starting to see the vision of a fully healthy roster, what they look like and what they anticipated. And I'll be like, don't get me wrong, this isn't a roster that is, when healthy, at top of the Eastern Conference team by any means, but I think there's been enough evidence that early in the season when they were healthy, or after that 3-game stretch, and then now when we're starting to get some players back, that you can start to craft, well, when healthy, this is a team that can be in the playoff race. And of course, it's always going to be, well, are they going to maintain the health? Is there more guys going to go out? And, you would hope that you've used up all of your bad injury mojo here early in the season, and now you can just kind of be on your way as the year goes. Of course, guys are going to be out. There's going to be some injuries that pop up, and that happens, and you have to work your way through that. Every team deals with that over an 82-game stretch, soon to be 84-game stretch. I have to practice that as we get into next season. But there's going to be those moments. There's going to be those lulls in the season. There's going to be those ups and downs. You kind of have to figure out how to manage that. And I think this is, talking about the Detroit game a week or so ago when they came back, I think that was important because it got to 5 or 6 games, whatever it is, of losing, but you didn't let it get to 8 or 9 or 10, where it's been the last few years. You hit that crushing losing streak that you can never recover from. And I think coming back in that game, not only one, I think, build confidence in this team and reset them going in the right direction. I think it also is a good sign of a stop the bleeding in a sense. Hold it where you are. And that's what they've done here the last month is stay in it where you are only, a couple games out of the race, whether it would be for a playoff spot or even in the division for third place, because neither of those things have run away from them to this point. Now, third place in the division is, a little bit farther at 26 points. The Sabres right now sit at 22. So that's still only 4 points back. And then, the wild card is the same thing. They're both 26 points. So you're 4 points out of a wild card. You're 4 points out of third place in the division. And that is with a situation where you have played chunks of this season without Michael Kesselring, without Jason Zucker, without Zach Benson, without Josh Norris, without Yuri Kulik. I feel like I'm missing more people that have missed time, but Jordan Greenway, if you want it. Luukkonen missed some time, and those we're kind of starting to, pick up here as we get to the bottom of the roster. But I think that overall, when you take a step back and look at reality, that was a good job by them to stay in it, to not be in a situation where, you look in the Eastern Conference and you can go to Nashville, who's already 11 points out. Like they're done. Forget it. I mean, just they're done. You never know. Crazy things happen in hockey. But that's a tall mountain to climb. So I think it's a good job overall that you should give them their credit for. We kick them a lot here and other places for the poor performance. But I think, to stay afloat with everything they've gone through, is good. And that puts them in a spot now where you get these guys back. And we're going to talk about Josh Norris in a second, who looks pretty close to returning, that you can make that push. You can then now start to climb the standings. It's so close. And it's really, you're going to get in some games here. The Penguins coming up, they're 3 points ahead of you. You win that game, you climb within one. We're going to start getting into these 4-point swings. It's early in the season still, I understand. But that's a 4-point swing game. You win that game, you were then a point. You lose that game, then, now you're 5 back of the Penguins, who, by the way, would jump into a playoff spot in theory. You have the Devils, who right now sit at 29 points and second in the Metro, but they just lost Jack Hughes for a chunk of the season. So you would think they might start to fall down the standings a little bit. They could be in the mix around the wild card. These are teams and games that you got to start winning. You're going to New Jersey's in your home building. Pittsburgh's the tough one. I feel like they never really play that good in Pittsburgh, but it's a team that can be had that's going through some struggles right now. And again, we'll save that here for the back half of this. But these Eastern Conference Atlantic Division games are going to start to be big, and you gotta pick up those points. You gotta have good 5-game stretches here. And keep yourself in and then start to climb. And the good thing is, like I said, the East looks pretty open. There's no team besides maybe Carolina, and that's a team you just beat, that is running away with things. Tampa Bay has found their rhythm and their mojo, so they're to the top of the Atlantic after struggling out of the gate. Not a huge surprise there, but the rest of the Atlantic Division looks to be had. You have Detroit and Ottawa sitting at 2 and 3. Montreal has fallen off at 3, 4, and 3 in their last 10. Florida is struggling with the injuries, and they're 6 and 4 in their last 10, so they're starting to climb a little bit. And you would think that, once they get those guys back in January, February, they'll really start to climb. And another team I'm just trying to hang around right now. And then there's the Sabres at 22 and Toronto. worst team in the Eastern Conference right now at 21 points in 22 games. The only team under 500 in the East. Kind of crazy, but it's not really. No, it's not crazy surprising when you look at that roster, and I get it. They don't have Matthews right now, and that's obviously a huge thing for them. But even before that, he wasn't playing that great. Their goaltending hasn't been as good as it was last season. So, the East is certainly open, and it would be a shame if they let that go this year, because I think this is a really great opportunity for them to be a playoff team. They've done a decent job staying in it, and now you gotta take that next step. You gotta. There's really at a point where there's no excuses. You have your guys back for the most part, and especially your key important pieces. Especially when Norris jumps in here, probably by the weekend. No excuses. This is the team you wanted. This is now you've got to hear. Let's see how it goes, and fingers crossed. Hopefully they stay healthy. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see how this team looks. Through the end of 2025, if you will, through December, and really what kind of spot they can see him in when the new year begins. But I mentioned Norris, so I guess we should go to there next, because that is the interesting one. I didn't think he'd be back this early. I thought at some point in December, realistically, which I guess essentially it almost is December, so whatever. It seemed like in practice today that he might have had a chance to play tomorrow. Ruff killed that one and said he's not going to play tomorrow, but he hasn't been ruled out for the weekend. The part about the weekend is now the Sabres have back-to-back games. They are home on Friday, and they're in Minnesota on Saturday. I would think they probably don't want his first two games to be back-to-back. So that leads me to believe, I would bet he makes his return against Minnesota on Saturday. Not a bad idea to have him jump in with some fresh legs in the second game of a back-to-back with travel against, what is a really hot Minnesota Wild team right now. I think that makes sense. We've seen before with Dahlin, I think it was last year, they played him in the first game of the back-to-back, so then sat him in the second one as a load management thing, what they call it now these days. So we'll see what they decide to do. I mean, I can understand, wanting to play him against the Eastern Conference team. Maybe at home, maybe you find that game more important, and then you try to go win a war in Minnesota, maybe squeak out a point. We'll see. We'll see what they do, but that's something to consider. That I think it would be surprising if they played both in a back-to-back situation with his history. I would anticipate he probably only plays one of those games, but we'll see. We'll see what they think. I'm not a doctor. I don't. Well, I should say I don't pretend to be. Sometimes I do pretend to be, but we'll see. We'll see where they go there. But for me, the interesting thing that I thought about, keep using the word interesting a lot here. But anyways, the thing that I thought about before he came back when he was practicing is where were they going to use him? Were they going to put him at wing? Were they going to put him at center? Was he going to go back with Tage? Would he take McLeod's spot and bump McLeod down? Going through it and looking at the roster, and if you were going to keep Noah Ostlund around, which looks like they're going to, we're going to get into that in a minute. The obvious thing for me was we've seen him have success in the preseason, and then for most of that first game, playing on a line with Zach Benson. So Doan has done a good job with Tuck and Tate, so you probably want to leave that alone. So that opens Benson to play somewhere else. So play Benson with Norris. They have that chemistry they started to build in the preseason. And then I think it makes sense to put him with Noah Ostlund. And that's exactly what they did. That's what they did in practice today. And that was encouraging. I called it a puck knower line. It is such an obvious mix of skill sets, and the fact that Ostlund can take some of the center responsibility, be it draws or defensive zone stuff if necessary, from Norris, especially as he starts to get ramped up and get going here. You combine his playmaking, you combine, Ostlund's forechecking and his transition, all of which fit into helping out Norris, who's a finisher. And then you have Benson, who's your two-way player, who's your guy in the wall. He's also a playmaker with his passing. We've seen that. It's really a strong fit. And I'm glad they're going to go to it. It's a bummer that we're not going to see it tomorrow because I was really excited to see that. We're going to have to wait a couple days to get a glimpse at that. Hopefully, I keep saying it, knock on wood, everybody stays healthy so we can see this full lineup together here. But really, if you look at it, how it is set up right now with Doan, Tage, and Tuck on your first line, and then you have your 2 second lines, your middle 6, we'll call it. McLeod, Zucker, Quinn, that has gone pretty well the last few games since Zucker's return. Quinn is starting to get to the middle of the ice again more with consistency. Hopefully that continues. That's been his thing. It's a couple games and it goes away. If he consistently does that, I think we can start to see him start to look like that guy that we saw a couple years ago. And then you're going to have your Norris, Oslin, and Benson line. And then you'll follow that up with your mix of however you want to put the fourth line together. I mean, that those top 3 lines is arguably the best top 9 this team has put together in what? Since the Eichel days, maybe? When O'Reilly and Eichel were both in the team. Been a long time. And I think that's what makes it so exciting is you're seeing the potential of that and wanting to actually see it and then see if it can yield the results for you. And, I'll give Lindy Ruff full credit for a couple of things. Seemingly sticking with Noah Oslin, I think he's deserved it. And not going the route of just sending him down. And I guess Kevin Adams can get some of this credit too because he makes that decision of not just sending him down because that's the easy move. Now, they're going to have to make a roster decision when Norris officially gets activated. We'll see how the next few games for Oslin go. If he doesn't play well, maybe then he is sent down, and that'll be a real shame we never get to see that line. Or they can make a decision with one of Kozak or Dunn. Or we can then get into a decision of what to do with Jordan Greenway. Because that, for me, is a conversation to be had. This is a player that consistently is dealing with injury stuff. He had 2 surgeries in the offseason. Now Ruff is saying that he didn't play because of load management and he's having a hard time building strength from his hernia surgeries, which I understand and that's valid. I get it. It brings back the question, well, why was he playing? But then they didn't have any players. Everyone was injured. Okay, fine, sure, yeah. But I think it's at the point now where you're healthy. There's no reason to force him in there. Look, Jordan Greenway is not, with all due respect to Jordan Greenway, is not a good enough player, in my opinion, that should be forced into your lineup when they're under 100%. I just think you have guys that can do similar things and give Kozak that can play a similar game. You have Josh Dunn that can play a similar game in all for less of a cap hit for cheaper value. You can get those same assets. I mean, I understand last season you could, make the argument of Greenway being a good penalty killer and some of his forechecking and two-way play. Yeah, okay, I get it. But that's not the season. He's not that this season. And maybe the strength thing is part of that, understandably. But he hasn't been that good this season. His speed is really, I think, impacting him this year more than I've noticed in the past. And again, it could be because of skating, because of the injuries. But you have to keep remembering that. But it just seems like he's always behind the play. He's always chasing the play because the skating doesn't allow him to be ahead of it. I don't think he sees the game well enough in certain aspects to be in spots before the puck does. Because you think of guys like Benson who aren't the fastest skater, but their IQ is so high that they know where they need to go. And they get there before the puck gets there. And that's why the skating doesn't hurt them because they're thinking the game faster than almost everybody on the ice. They know where the puck is going to go. They know how to attack it. They know how to get there. And just Greenway doesn't have that. And then it's, the penalty kill this year for him hasn't been that good. He's been outplayed by other guys. And it's a funny, I went and double checked it in 2 places. So I'm doing an article right now on the penalty kill and why it's been going so well. And I was going through, I did the full team look, and then I went through into the team aspect of it. And, I was going through okay, who has the good underlying numbers from a penalty kill standpoint. Who is, your biggest shot blocker? Because that's something I get into in the article, how the shot blocking is different this year than last year, which I'll save that for the written content instead of here. But Greenway, and I think it was 39 minutes, is showing no block shots. Now, I don't know if that's entirely 100% true. I mean, some of these numbers, when you come into block shots, some of that can be a little bit off. But to have a goose egg in 39 minutes tells me one of two things. He's not getting in shot lanes quick enough. Two, that he could be preventing blocking shots because he's covering an injury or doesn't want to take or, isn't as willing to get in the shot lane. And that's very un-Jordan Greenway-like because he was never really afraid to jump in the shot lane. So I think it might lean towards more of the injury protection side of it. But then that gets into, okay, again, he's not a good enough player to be in your lineup when he's not 100%. So the way he's playing right now at his current health, Jordan Greenway is not one of their top 12 forwards currently. And that's tough because this is a player you're paying $4 million, not only this year, but next year too. And if you go by practice today, and maybe if Norris comes out, he takes that spot, or maybe it's just done, goes back into there, and it's the same lineup as you put on the ice on Sunday, which is what I would do. But it gets into a conversation of, well, this has to, how long does this go on? I think at some point it gets beyond load management to, well, we're just scratching this player because he's not good enough. And maybe with the roster decisions that are coming up, he gets forced in because of that. Obviously not going to waive Jordan Greenway. So it's going to be something I'm going to watch. And I've said this numerous times that this team needs to get away from being afraid to not play guys. No matter their salary, no matter, who they are to a degree. You put your best players, you put the best lineup you think is possible on the ice. And if Jordan Greenway is not one of the players that gives you the best lineup, then he doesn't play. And that's where you're at. And of course, you can rotate him in and mix him in and stuff like that, sure, to keep legs fresh and all of that. But I'm not sure at this point, at least until he gets 100% healthy and we see if that helps. I just don't think he's an every game player for them right now. And again, that's not the best look on Kevin Adams for paying a guy in $4 million for the next 2 years when you have a handful of players in your team that do that for under $1 million. Poor use of cap assets, one could say, but we'll keep an eye on Greenway. It's going to be something that I think can become a bigger talking point as we move forward here, especially with everyone healthy. And if there's better players playing that are not playing, and while he plays and continues to struggle, it'll get louder and louder on the Sabres having to make a decision there, or just continue to frustrate fans as he plays, not up to the same level the other guys could be if they were in the lineup. All right, the next thing I want to go to is talking about the offense, because this is probably somewhere that, right now a clown would come out and shove a giant pie in my face, because a lot of the offseason I talked about, well, did this team do enough to replace the scoring? You lost JJ Peterka. You didn't really replace them. And of course, I said, Josh Norris, yeah, sure. But, how many games till he gets injured? Well, turns out it was 55 minutes. And there goes that. Jack Quinn isn't off to the best start. He's starting to get it on a little bit here as we go. But it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It seems like this team always finds ways, and maybe it's a credit to Lindy Ruff or just, I don't know, the players in this roster. They always find ways to score goals at 5-on-5. I think this morning when I looked, they were sixth. There's sixth going into tonight in goals for per hour at 5-on-5. They're 14th in expected goals for per 60, one of the better ratings they've had in quite a long time in Evolving Hockey's model. And it's, there's 5 players on pace right now. If you look at the pace charts we put out for over 20 goals. Tuck and Tage, which not a surprise. And then you get into Josh Doan's on pace for 26. I think Zucker also on pace for 26. Matthias Samuelsson, how you doing? On pace for 20. Like, what? Do I anticipate Matthias Samuelsson scoring 20 goals or continuing the pace he's on right now, shooting 3 or 4 goals over expected, whatever he's doing? No. But, okay, Matthias Samuelsson on pace for 20. And then you have Quinn, who's behind him on pace for 19, and McLeod also behind him on pace for 19 as well. So you have potentially 7 guys that are pushing at least 20 goals this season. And that is a credit to them for having a lineup that you can get scoring up and down it, no matter what line it is. The fourth line, maybe not. But again, you got Beck Malenstein pulling off moves against the Hurricanes and scoring. You've had Dunn put in a few. Kozak has scored a few. They'll pop some here and there. And really, that's what makes you a good team, is the opponent can't really take any of your lines late. There's no break because any of those lines can get you on a given night. Of course, the Tage line, the way Tage is playing now and finally going, on pace, I think it was for 46, almost 50 goals already after that slow start. That's obviously great. And he's back in the middle, and I think that's rejuvenated him, and it's great to see. Tuck is quietly having a really good season and on pace for career highs in points, and I think even goals too. So yeah, you're always going to have your top line and they're going, but I think being able to not rely so heavily on it, which is, a crutch of Sabres teams of old, is if your top line wasn't going, forget it, you're done. And that's not the case now. If Tage isn't having a good night, well, it's one of the 2 lines now have the capability to pick you up, especially when you get Norris back in there. You have a guy who has the potential to score 25 to 30 goals in a season that you can drop behind Tage, and you can drop behind a line of 20 goal scorers and McLeod, Quinn, and Zucker. So there's the bones of a team here. There is the bones of a team that can be something, at least in the playoff race, and get their way back into it and be something that we're excited to watch night in, night out. I'm excited for every game because I'm a sicko and a weirdo. But your standard fan, to kind of loop them back in and be an exciting team as we move forward here throughout the remainder of the season. 60 games still to go. 60, long way. Speaking of games, though, let's get into those. 3 games to wrap the month of November. Wednesday at Pittsburgh, Friday home against New Jersey, and then Saturday at Minnesota. So as I mentioned, the Penguins have lost 2 in a row. They are 3-4-3 in their last 10. The Devils here, I had lost 3 in a row, but I think they just won last night, if I remember, but maybe, I don't know, I could have that wrong, but they've been a little bit struggling lately. No Jack Hughes for them for a while, as I mentioned, so that's something you're going to want to take advantage of. And then you have the Minnesota Wild, who, when I did this yesterday, won 5 in a row, 8-1-1 in their last 10. Jesper Wallstedt has been excellent for them. The good news for the Sabres, though, looking ahead to Saturday, is not only will the Sabres be on back-to-backs, but so will the Minnesota Wild. Now, the difference is the Wild play home Friday and home Saturday. But the reason I bring that up in talking about Wallstedt is the Wild play the Colorado Avalanche on Friday. So you would assume they're going to go with their top guy right now. So Wallstedt will play Friday, and the Sabres will probably see Gustafsson on Saturday. So a little bit of a break there, to help them get the not red-hot goaltender and maybe increase their odds of winning on Saturday. But, the goal here, 2 on the road, 1 at home. I think you get 4 out of 6. I'm happy. You can sneak 5 out of 6, even better. You get 6 out of 6, fantastic. But I think minimum for me is you get 4 out of 6 here. That's what you got to do. Hopefully regulation wins against the Eastern Conference teams. Like for me, I would take wins against Pittsburgh, New Jersey, and a loss against Minnesota. I think you live with that. But definitely regulation. I don't want to give points to Pittsburgh and New Jersey. I prefer not to do that. Points are points this early in the season, of course. You don't want to shy away, but ideally, you don't want to give teams that are going to be chasing free points, especially if you outplay them. But I did want to shift focus on the next one. So the next one is the Pittsburgh Penguins in Pittsburgh. Like I said, it's 3-4-3 in the last 10. They were off to a good start. They're starting to fall back a little bit here. The one thing that's going to be of note is Tristan Jarry, who has been out since the 3rd of November. Likely will return tomorrow against the Sabres. He's having a pretty good season in 7 appearances. He has 5 wins with a 5.06 goal save above expected in Evolving Hockey's model. That's pretty good. So after his rough year last year, he seemingly rebounded this year. It is his first game back, so you could get him a little bit rusty and put a few by him for sure. And what will help is the Pittsburgh Penguins defense is arguably one of the worst in the league. They are 30th in expected goals against per hour at 5-on-5 in the Twins model, so that is not good at all. Not surprising. Look at their roster. That defense is not the strong points by any means for that team. So they can be had there for sure. But how they counter that is their offense has been good this season. So I believe their offense was, I want to say, at least top 10, I've ever written down here, in expected goals for per 60. So, that's something that you have to deal with. And they always have their big guys, right? They have their big guys going of Crosby and Malkin, and Russ has been sick, but he's coming back. So, Raquel and the other guys, and they got offense there, right? They have guys who can generate. Now, what's interesting though is they have guys who can generate offense, and they are generating offense, but in actual goal production, they're 26th in the league at 5-on-5 in goals for per hour at 2.13. So that's not very good. So they're generating offense, but they're not finishing to level, I guess is the best way to put it. Where they are finding their scoring when they need it is on the power play. They are the highest scoring per hour team in the league on the power play at 11.85. So again, similar to the Edmonton Oilers, and it feels like the Penguins power play always kills the Sabres when it's Crosby and Malkin and those guys. They always get them. You got to stay out of the box here too. You gotta, and when you get a penalty, you do have the top penalty kill unit in the league. You got to lean on them, but we can't lean on them for 4 or 5 kills. It's 1 or 2. I think you got to try to keep it to survive that way. I think if the Sabres can keep this game at 5-on-5, they're going to be just fine. Barring Jarry doing something crazy to them. I think the Sabres are the better 5-on-5 team here, and I think that's going to be the key. That is going to be the key. And also, I think the key is being ready in this game. The Penguins have not played since Saturday, and their last game on Saturday was a 5-0 loss to the Minnesota Wild. Sheloff was pulled in that game. So this is going to be a team that's well rested. It's going to be a team that has probably been sitting around stewing about a loss that stung a little bit and embarrassed them maybe a little bit. So I think they have to be ready. This is a team, the Sabres, who have not started strong this season. You got to be up for it because you don't want this to run away on you early. So be up for it. Be ready. I would anticipate that the Penguins are going to come out quick. They're going to have a few guys back on their lineup. So that's key. It's going to be key in this game is getting off to a good start and maybe even kind of holding the fort on an early push. Lukin, it seems like he's going to start. get a couple nice saves out of him, get in a groove and build off of what I thought was his best game of the season, or maybe one or two best games of the season from Carolina, and start to kind of stack some nice games together here and see if he can hold a net over these next few games as well. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening. If I don't put another podcast out before Thursday, everybody have a good, happy, and safe Thanksgiving. Enjoy your meals. Shove that food in there. I know I'll be doing it. I love Thanksgiving. So everybody enjoy time with their families. Think about what you're thankful for sure. That's the whole point of Thanksgiving. And then we'll see how these next few games go, and we will talk again soon. See ya.